Here's a quick question that I promise actually relates to what we're going to talk about. Do you know why Oppenheimer was chosen to lead the Manhattan Project, which was the first people to create the nuclear bomb? It actually wasn't because he was the smartest scientist. It was because he was the most well-rounded and because he was the best at articulating his ideas to both the really smart scientists and to the people who might not understand what those scientists are saying. In other words, his ability to sound smart and articulate himself not only had a big effect on his career, but on the entire course of American history. Like it or not, being perceived as intelligent is a massive advantage, and I know this because I grew my account to over 100,000 followers in less than 6 months, and a big part of that is my ability to articulate myself and my ideas. So, if you want to go from this to this,
I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis. Listen again.
then listen up, take notes, lock in, and we're going to talk about how you can sound more intelligent and articulate yourself on social media. A big part of sounding intelligent is simple articulation. Articulation is defined as the ability to express your thoughts and ideas clearly and effectively through language. That's a broad term, but let's simplify it even more. It just means taking your complex ideas and simplifying them down into something easily digestible. The idea of simplifying things to sound more intelligent might seem like a paradox, but it's the reality of the situation. Yes, you can sound smart by using big words that no one understands, but you're also probably going to be ignored because no one wants to hear all that. We need to both sound intelligent and make sure that our audience understands us, or else we're just wasting our time. A more crude term for it is mental masturbation. Your job is to take those complex ideas and turn them into something that is nearly impossible to misunderstand. And I say this very intentionally because being easy to understand and impossible to misunderstand mean two different things. To be impossible to misunderstand means that you need to explain things the way that a child would understand them. Don't make assumptions of their prior knowledge. That's where most people get caught up. Instead, you should actually assume that they don't know anything about your subject. The first step to this is to actually write down your words. Jeff Bezos famously has his executives write down their briefs and proposals rather than present them, because writing makes you have to think more clearly. And of course, we see how well that works for him and Amazon as they're a $1 trillion company. So we see that even if you are presenting something verbally, writing it is crucial to it being well understood. Because if you don't know what you're talking about, it will be very apparent when you write it down. You'll repeat back what you wrote down and probably hurt yourself in confusion because it'll become apparent that you don't really understand the topic as much as you thought you did. Don't worry, it happens to me all the time. But that's the first part of being articulate. It's writing down these things that might seem like nonsense and piecing out something that actually sounds like something. If you don't fully understand what you're talking about, then you have to go back to the drawing board. Do some more research, look into it a little bit more, and figure out what you can actually talk about regarding that subject. Now, once you do this, you'll probably find that you wrote a lot more than you intended to, and your ideas are going to expand to even more and more abstract ideas. And that's okay. That's a big part of the process. And that's going to take us to our next point, which is editing your ideas. See, I gained most of my followers through short form content, which means I only have about 90 seconds to present most of my ideas. Now, in some cases, you have longer depending on the platform, but I still believe you have a responsibility to make it as brief as possible. Even with me talking to you here on YouTube, I had to piece this down into something that was more brief than what I originally had. Because if I gave you my raw ideas, it would be spreading into a whole bunch of areas and it wouldn't be coherent. We need to compress our ideas into something that is easily understood and interesting to listen to. When you did the exercise that I explained above, you'll probably find that when you wrote it down, you branched off into other different areas and over-explained yourself so that you could be more understood. So how are we supposed to fix that? Because if we want to be impossible to misunderstand and we want to be as brief as possible, it seems that those two things are at odds with each other. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You're going to have to edit out parts of your ideas, which means that the point that you make may not be as potent. But here's the thing. Most of the content you make, especially short form, is not meant to explain an entire concept. It's just meant to be an introduction to the concept. And ideally, you would have a book, a podcast, or some long-form piece of content that could really explain your point in full. The short-form content you make is more so just a preview for that whole idea that you have. And this leads people to being more frustrated with short-form content, but that just means they don't really understand the medium. My goal is to get at least 80% clarity with your idea and to stick to just one main point when explaining myself in short-form content. If you know what the main point of your idea is, you can take out all the parts that aren't essential to understanding that one point. Sure, they might not learn everything, but the key to being effective is knowing what parts really matter and what parts don't in context of what you're talking about. That is the difference between wisdom and intelligence. Intelligence is raw knowledge, and wisdom is the parts that matter to the situation at hand. And by the way, if you're looking to get more wise when it comes to content creation, sign up for my newsletter below so that I can talk about all the things that I might not be able to talk about here on YouTube. Now, here's one thing that fully takes me out of the content when people do this. When people are trying to sound smart, but they're really just copying the voice and cadence of some smart person they saw on TV or in some other piece of content. It comes off as a parody of that person, and I can always tell because they just don't look confident in what they're saying and in the way that they're saying it. They look like they're cosplaying a smart person. You need to have a level of authenticity to your speech. I'm going to add a caveat to this advice. Controversial opinion here, but I'm actually not a fan of being 100% authentic in content creation. The way that I'm talking to you right now is not the way that I talk to my friends in real life. In some way, I am putting on a bit of a character for the camera, but it's a character that's based on a true version of myself. I'm not lying to you, I'm just presenting a more digestible and articulate version to you. If I was 100% authentic, I'd probably be telling more crude jokes, or I'd be sounding a lot more sleepy given how late I am recording this video right now. So it's not about being completely authentic or about being a complete actor. You're simply presenting a version of yourself that the audience can consume and that you can promise to show up as every single time. People want consistency when they watch content. It's like a TV show. That's what I say all the time. And so you need to be that TV personality when you show up. When you watch Jimmy Fallon on TV, yes, I'm sure that is a big part of his personality, but I'm also sure that is not the way that he always acts with his wife, his kids, or his friends in his private life, and that's completely okay. It's like going to almost any job. You're still you, but you're going to present a more professional version of yourself. And it's up to you to find out what that version of yourself looks and sounds like. In the beginning, maybe you do take some inspiration from your favorite speakers or actors when you get on camera. That's okay if it makes you feel a lot more comfortable, but you do have to get a little bit out of that and become more of yourself. The audience can smell when you're faking it. So it's okay to be inspired by others, but make sure to mix it with the real way that you talk and the real way that you think. And here's a tip that might be a little cringe, but I will literally talk to myself while I'm driving or walking and just express my ideas as if I'm in an interview or something. But it really does help me to understand what that voice sounds like. And if you do happen to record it, you can go ahead and listen back to it to see what you really do sound like. Now, the final part here comes down to authority. People will listen much closer if they feel you're worth listening to. That is what authority is. The big thing here is presenting the right type of authority, because the wrong type will have the complete opposite effect. If you're a 16-year-old kid just starting your business, don't pretend to be this all-knowing expert. You can still establish some authority, but most people are just not going to believe you if you're a teenager that's acting like he knows everything. Instead, you might want to establish authority as a doer rather than a teacher. For example, you might say, I started my first business 3 months ago, and here are some of the big mistakes I've made so far. Or you might say, I'm trying to reach this specific goal by this specific time, and here's what I'm doing to get there. This is something that people can't refute because you're doing a documentary rather than a lecture. And it builds authority because I see that you're actually doing the thing rather than just talking about it. It's like the difference between presenting yourself as a Harvard student or impersonating a Harvard professor. A Harvard student is still seen as very intelligent. In fact, it might be seen as more intelligent than certain professors at other schools. But if you tell me that you're a professor and you have absolutely no credentials, then you don't seem like you're intelligent, you just seem like a liar. Give your audience the appropriate type of authority and they will trust your ideas, and ultimately, they'll trust you. Take a look at this guy's content. He does this very well.
Is it possible for a broke college student to help 1 million people dealing with breakups, trauma, even... 4 months ago, I built an AI therapist that speaks Gen Z, and it absolutely... Wait, I should probably explain.
He doesn't need to say that he's some genius engineer. By being honest and humble and simply presenting what he's doing, we trust him more and probably see him as more intelligent. You'll look more intelligent based on what you're doing, not by telling everybody that you're smart. So if you can follow these tips and show up confidently on camera, people will like and trust you. It's not gonna come immediately, but practice it a few times and you will find your voice. Maybe that voice won't sound like the typical smarty pants or intelligent guy you've seen, but you'll still be seen as intelligent if you have very good information and you're confident in the information you're giving. Real value is one of the easiest ways that you can come off as intelligent. Nothing is going to beat that. With that being said, make sure to like and subscribe because it really does help the channel, and check out my other videos here. Keep creating, keep doing your thing, and I'll see you later. Peace.